everyone, welcome to a new episode of Inside the Leader's Mind. Today we have with us Arjun Saxena, who leads Tech Mahindra's experience design, consulting, data and AI businesses globally from New York. With over 25 years of consulting and leadership experience, he focuses on delivering tangible outcomes through strategy, data, and AI-led transformation. Welcome, Arjun. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Geetika. It's a pleasure being here today.
Great. Let's dive straight in. You have spent decades advising global enterprises. What's one belief you held strongly 10 years ago that you have completely changed your mind about today?
I have spent over 25 years in consulting, a lot of it in New York, but serving clients globally across the US, across Canada, Western Europe, and also the Asia Pacific region. And I've had a chance to work with senior executive teams across multiple clients, across sectors. So financial services, healthcare, and technology and telecom have been the primary ones, but also some other work further afield. And one thing which I think all of us have probably noticed and seen, and certainly I see it in my day-to-day client interactions, is the power of the Gen AI revolution that's happening all around us, right? So 10 years ago, if I think about how consulting engagements used to be done and how we would interact with teams, interact with clients using a teaming model, which had a partner, had an associate partner, perhaps one or two engagement managers, and then several junior team members, to really have the full pyramid, to have expertise, but I'll also have colleagues who would be part of the team and would do analysis as well as research and so on and so forth. That has changed a lot with the what Gen AI tools can do today. I have personally been able to use some of the tools that we at TechM have equipped all of our consultants with, Microsoft Copilot, but also Gen AI tools like Claude Code as well as Perplexity to really do a lot of what previously junior team members would have done for me, right? So the power that's in the hand of a single individual today is multiplied manifold, right? It's not perfect by any means. It still needs some human intervention, but still, what I can do using some of these tools in just a few minutes surpasses what I would have been able to do with a full-fledged team 10 years ago. So that's something which I'm still exploring and learning, as I think many of us are, given the pace of change. But it's been quite a spectacular development, which certainly 10 years ago I could not have imagined would be the case today.
Perfect. In closed-door clients conversation, what are leaders really worried about that doesn't always show up in public narratives?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. So I would have to say, firstly, that the answer probably varies a little bit depending on which industry sector and also what geography you're interacting with clients in, right? Obviously, with the Gen AI revolution, the maximum impact one sees is on the US West Coast, where there's a number of telecom, media, technology clients concentrated, especially in the technology sector, which increasingly is a very, very significant driver of the economy, especially in the US. If you look at GDP growth, even in the last 12 to 15 months, very significant chunk is coming literally from technology capex, even the opex that is being driven by Gen AI companies, tools, chips, data centers, secondary and tertiary effects against those such as power and other construction and so on and so forth, right? What one sees is that the leaders in those sectors are extremely concerned about where this will lead in the next 3 odd years, given the exponential growth that has been continuing, right? So many of these companies have had literally 10x growth year over year for 2.5 years running, right? And if you think about it and multiply those numbers over even 24 or 30-month period, many companies have literally grown 100-fold in terms of the power of their data centers, in terms of even their revenue. And the interesting thing is to figure out how long that is going to continue, whether that is something that these companies can really be prepared for. Now, some of this has come out in the public narrative, but a lot of it is still very much behind closed doors, right? Because the policy implications, public policy implications, or the implications on employment, on how you think about distribution, taxation, and so on and so forth, are very profound, right? We find some of it out in the public domain with leaders like Mr. Amadai speaking about them. but a number of the other paths are still very much behind closed doors until the time that leaders, not just business leaders, but also political leaders and other people who have a voice, really get to some kind of consensus. I don't think we will see all the conversations out in the public domain.
That's a great insight. Moving on to the next segment. Now, some quick choices. This or that. Recognition or personal satisfaction.
I have gotten to a stage in my career where recognition per se is not really going to drive a lot of my decisions. So personal satisfaction for sure.
Reading a book or watching a documentary.
Reading a book for sure. I have been an avid reader for a very long time, and even today, both on my Kindle as well as paper editions, I love reading. I have graduated, especially on flights, to also listening to podcasts, but that too is, again, long form, right? So typically I would listen to like a 2-hour, 3-hour podcast going in depth into a topic. And I certainly prefer that over documentary.
City life or mountain escape?
City life. I live and work in New York City, and have been there for the last 25 plus years. And I really love the buzz. I love the cultural offerings in a city like New York, or for that matter, any other large city, right? Mumbai in India or London, many other cities have similar offerings, and I certainly appreciate those.
Planned itinerary or spontaneous exploration?
I am very much a planned itinerary person. So, whether it is business trips or personal trips, planned itinerary is the way to go for me.
Great choices. Now, the next segment. First thing that comes to your mind, no overthinking. One word that defines your leadership style.
Delegation, I would say.
The hardest decision you have had to make as a leader.
So, I've spent over 27 years now in corporate life, and I have seen, as many of us would have, my share of, downturns, recession, wars. In fact, I was in and around the World Trade Center area when the 9/11 attacks happened in 2001, right? So hardest decisions in my mind always tend to be, decisions to downsize or let people go, right? Again, having been through the 2001 recession, the 2008-2009 global financial crisis, and then more recently, the COVID-driven downturn in the economy in 2020. Each of those situations, I was a partner and in a position where I was taking decisions around downsizing and layoffs and so on and so forth. Those to me have been the hardest ones because, I really value the teamwork. You develop personal connections with colleagues that you work with, and those tend to be very hard decisions for me.
If not this career, then what?
That's an interesting one. I come from a family with a very strong military background. My father was an officer in the Indian Air Force. Two of his brothers were officers in the Indian Army. And a fourth brother wanted to join the Indian Navy, and because he had classes, he couldn't join, so he joined the Merchant Navy. So, when I was thinking about my career, I was also actually keen to think about a career in the armed force. In fact, I took the National Defense Academy exam back in high school in India, which is, the equivalent of what in the US, for example, cadet officers would take to go to West Point, similar examinations in other parts of the world. And I was called for the interview, which is the second stage after you qualify for the written exam, and the what's called the Services Selection Board SSB interview. Now, that interview happened to be on the exact same date as my engineering joint entrance examination for IIT admissions. So I had a choice to make. I ended up choosing, engineering. But I always think that if I had not done that, then I would have probably been an officer in the Indian Air Force and the Indian Army. So military career.
Wow, that's a great career option. Now, to close us out, what guidance would you like to share with aspiring professionals and young talent looking to build a career in this space?
Sure. So look, I think, this is certainly a time when you hear and see all types of messages coming from industry figures. In the news, I talked about the potential impact that Gen AI may have on employment, on the way we work together in teams, on the size of teams, the nature of work itself. And that will certainly be something which will be a defining characteristic for anybody who's entering the workforce today on the early stage of their careers, whether in technology or even further afield. So I do think that people should be very, very up to date in terms of reading, in terms of understanding what is on offer, even trying some of the new tools which are available, right? So many of them are available in free versions, whether it is Claude Code or other tools from OpenAI, from Microsoft, from other frontier labs, and the second order derivations or tools where companies like Devin or even Perplexity have offerings which build off some of the foundational models, right? Personally, concur with some of the doomsday scenarios. So I do feel that smart human beings who have been able to master these tools and are also able to layer on good communication skills with relationship management skills, the ability to synthesize thinking and judgment, most importantly, still will continue to have a very important role over the next 20, 30 years of the careers that early career professionals are now embarking on. And so that would be my suggestion, that, stay abreast of developments, try and use some of these tools yourself, and then focus on how you can complement and build upon things which only humans can do right now, right? So it's relationship management skills and convincing people about your point of view with data, with rationale and logic. And then, as I also mentioned, the judgment that comes only with experience.
That's a great advice. It is surely going to help everyone. Thank you, Arjun, for those insights, concise, candid, and inspiring. That's all for this episode of Inside the Leader's Mind. Stay tuned for more leadership conversation. As at TechM, we are always #limitless
together.